All right. We will get back to Gulag America a little bit later in the podcast, but I want to talk about the affirmative action case that just happened with Supreme Court. Dry sip, one sec. Okay, those leftist tears taste so good. We had a huge conservative win today, if you didn't hear. It was awesome. The Supreme Court came out in a 6-3 ruling and a 6-2 ruling, so there were two cases, but they went hand in hand against South Carolina, or I believe the University of South Carolina and Harvard. Now, it was 6-3 against South Carolina, 6-2 versus Harvard. Now, you might be saying, what? 6-2, that only adds up to 8, and we have 9 Supreme Court justices. Ketanji Brown Jackson, if you remember, she was the black woman that is now a Supreme Court justice only because she's a black woman. She went to Harvard, and because this case was with Harvard, she basically abstained from voting just because of ethical, just being ethical and not, and obviously having a personal tie to someone in the case. So she didn't vote in that one. Wouldn't have mattered even if she had been, because it was 6-3 in the case of South Carolina. What the Supreme Court basically decided was that affirmative action is not legal in the United States. It's not okay. This was voted across ideological lines, not partisan lines. The Supreme Court justices, if you didn't know, they don't technically come out in support of parties, though they are ideological and they are put into place by the U.S. president, who is usually a part of a party. So the 6 conservative judges were all put in place by Republican presidents, and then the 3 liberal judges were put in by Democrat presidents. If you didn't know what affirmative action is, essentially what affirmative action does is say I'm a black guy named James, and I'm James. I'm going to go and apply for Harvard. They are going to ask me, what race am I? And I'm going to put black, and they will take into account my race because they're trying to be equitable in the admissions process. Now, what people found in this case and in others is that, especially for Harvard, but in really all colleges around the nation, there were Asians and white people that were being discriminated against because of their privilege. For those who are listening, I put quotations around the word privilege, because historically, white people and Asians have a better chance of getting into college. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and we're not going to talk about those today, but they vary from different cultural differences, mostly to test scores, extracurriculars, etc. But affirmative action was struck down in the Supreme Court, basically making it illegal to consider race when admitting someone to a college. It is a tradition in the United States to get gifts for those that you love on their birthday, but what about America's birthday? This 4th of July, I have partnered up with Gulag America, the perfect 4th of July present for your friends and family. Gulag America is an apparel company with high-quality clothing and designs for the best patriots. Gulag America features clothing with classic sayings such as "Don't tread on me," as well as some of my personal favorites, which are I identify as like a father, husband, or also there's one that says I identify as a 9mm gun. Very awesome. I'm going to be donning that shirt specifically here in a couple days. But I'm very excited to be partnered with them. Right now, if you use my code JoshCar10, you will get 10% off at gulagamerica.com. It is the perfect 4th of July gift. Again, that is JoshCar10 at gulagamerica.com for great clothing, great quality, great designs. And this is a really big win, I think, as conservatives, as people who believe in meritocracy, which is the basic belief that that the content of your character is more important than your skin color. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I guess what's interesting about it is this used to be a liberal issue, right? Like Martin Luther King Jr. literally said those words that I just said. He had a dream that people would be judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And that's really interesting that people on the left, they've completely forgotten that, and they completely denounced that, which is fascinating since MLK Jr. was, someone that they still praise him, but obviously don't believe in all the things that he stood for. But the left has fallen so far away from him, and now it's conservatives who are trying to get back to that meritocracy approach, especially in college admission. So now it will be illegal to consider skin color. We'll see how easy it is to kind of bring that into effect and enforce that. But hopefully what we'll see is that people will, for the most part, be getting into good colleges because they had good grades and they had good extracurriculars and they wrote good essays, as people should. Makes sense. A side note about this, something really interesting. It literally just broke in the news. Apparently, there was a suspicious package left by the Supreme Court, and police are investigating it. So obviously, whenever something big like this comes out, something that's connected to social politics, generally speaking, there's going to be some sort of backlash. I mean, we know what happened with Roe v. Wade when that was overturned. That was crazy in the Dobbs decision. But even with this one, since there's a racial component, there's going to be a lot of upset people, obviously a lot of happy people as well. But that suspicious package, people are kind of speculating that it might be an explosive device. So hopefully, I mean, everything will be safe. They've kind of quarantined that zone off so that people can't be in the area. The Supreme Court justices aren't there, even though they're in term right now. But I want to talk really quick about some of the reactions to this. I'm going to take one more sip real quick. Some reactions to this. I want to talk about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez first. So she tweeted, she said, if the Supreme Court is serious about their ludicrous colorblindness claims, they would have abolished legacy admissions, aka affirmative action for the privileged. Now, what she's referring to right there is the fact that people can get into prestigious colleges by having parents who donate a lot of money to that specific college. She goes on to say, this is according to NBC, by the way, 70% of Harvard's legacy applicants are white. SCOTUS, or the Supreme Court of the United States, didn't touch that, which would have impacted them and their patrons. To be honest, I actually don't disagree with AOC on this. Like, I thought about it and I was like, yeah, that, like, I don't really believe that people should get into college for paying the college tons of money either. Like, I think that if people want to be philanthropic towards that college because they went there themselves and they want to pay it forward, I think that's awesome. But with the expectation that their kid is going to get into the college, it's not like some like evil moral justice or something that I think that should even be illegal. I just think it's like lame. Like, I don't know why you would teach your kids to basically, like, if they're going to go to college, it's essentially them stepping outside of their home, right? They're going on their own. They're trying to learn, start a career, get education so they can start a career. I don't know why you'd start that off by giving them a handout such as getting into Harvard, not because you worked really hard for it, but just because they paid them a ton of money. And me, as someone who is currently in college, I got into my college of my own merit. I have scholarships for it, and it gives me a lot of self-worth as well as motivation to do well in college because no one gave it to me. Like, I'm very blessed. I'm not saying I'm entitled to this college in any way, shape, or form, but my parents have donated money to this college, and it had nothing to do with me getting into it. I know that for a fact, as well as the scholarships given are simply based off of merit from the university and have nothing to do with my skin color, as well as what my parents have contributed to the college. So it's given me a fantastic self-worth and ownership over my education. And so I don't know why parents would rob their kids of that. So I kind of agree with AOC on that. I don't know about making it illegal, but just as like a social choice, I mean, yeah, go for it. Another cool tweet that came out was DeSantis. DeSantis kind of called out Trump. And I like it when DeSantis calls out Trump. Like, everyone knows here, I'm not a Trump guy. And in just a second, I'm going to defend Trump. So before you're like, he's not a Trump guy, I try to be fair, okay? I like Trump on some things. But anyway, DeSantis called out Trump. I like this because I like it when DeSantis kind of gets in it. Like, he starts fighting a little more. Sometimes he's a little lackluster, excuse me. And so hearing him really go at something, it kind of excites me, I'm not going to lie. So DeSantis called out Trump for changing on affirmative action. This happens with Trump a lot. I just want to point that out. I'm going to read a tweet that he said while he was president. He said, quote, "I'm fine with affirmative action." This is according to NBC, again, noting we've lived with it for a long time. I have lived with it for a long time. So Trump basically says it's fine. Like, we've lived it for a long time. He personally said, I'm fine with affirmative action. Then today, Trump came out and praised the affirmative action case that it got shut down. So we see Trump has kind of switched on this, and DeSantis called him out on it. He basically said, like, yo, Trump, like, why'd you change your opinion on this? And I'm not saying it's like a reason to not vote for Trump, but I appreciated that DeSantis called him out for it. And a reminder to everyone, Trump does this with a lot of things. Like he kind of is wishy-washy on a lot of things. Like we consider Trump to be the leader of the Republican Party, which is a conservative party, and it is for sure, but Trump is really not a diehard conservative by any means. Like this is a guy who had Pride merch, like he had Pride MAGA hats. He had a Pride flag at one of his rallies. He liked affirmative action. He was in bed with Big Pharma during COVID. Like there are a lot of things that diehard like it's kind of ironic. A lot of people who really love Trump are also really anti-vax and really anti-pride, really anti-affirmative action, as they should be. But it's interesting because Trump, to be honest, has been kind of wishy-washy on all three of those subjects. So I just think that's an important thing to consider and kind of interesting in moving forward to the 2024 election and just considering who Trump really is. Because sometimes we get lost in the charisma and the stage performance that Trump puts on, and it's really great. But just remembering where do his ideology really lie, where his allegiances, and is he kind of just switching around to see what sticks? Here's my take on this, though. The Supreme Court. This is a huge win for conservatives. Just the idea that someone would get to do something because of their race is disgusting to me. Like, I'm not advocating for colorblindness. I think it's awesome to identify our individual cultures and strengths, and inherent in ethnicity is culture. But the race itself, like the color of your skin, I just don't really care. Like, I'm sorry. I don't understand why you having darker skin, or not even darker, but just a different hue of your skin, suddenly gives you the right to go to a college that someone else doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. You can't really make any argument for immigrants having priority because Asian immigrants do really well. Another group of people we don't talk about is Nigerian immigrants. They do fantastic in college and in admissions. And so I don't really understand how you can justify people being able to use their skin color as a mechanism to get ahead in society. I think that's something that's just really gross. We need to get rid of that. That was kind of the whole point of the civil rights era. Well, that was the perceived, point of the civil rights era, and of course, it's swung the other way. But I believe this is a big win. The Supreme Court is like on fire this term. It's awesome. This 6-3 thing is awesome. Another reminder for my other podcast, I talked about this. This is why presidents matter so much. The only thing that should matter to you when you are considering the candidate, like in a primary, to take on the other political party, is who has the best chance of beating them. Because not only are they going to rule and govern for 4 years, maybe 8 years, they're going to be choosing judges, not just Supreme Court judges, but all judges, but Supreme Court judges especially. And so if we had not been able to get a Republican, Donald Trump, in office 2016 to 2020, we would not have seen this case happen. We would not have seen the Dobbs case. Some of the biggest influences in our politics, much more than the legislature, like way more, if you think about it. Like what has the Republican Congress done for us? Not that much. What has the Republican Senate done? Hardly anything. What has a conservative Supreme Court done? Tons. And so that's something important. Speaking of the Supreme Court being on fire, just to name a few, these are the other cases that they've settled in this term alone. And they've got some other important things coming up. But one of them was on religious rights. It was Groff versus DeJoy. According to NBC, the court made it easier for employees to seek religious accommodations in a case involving a Christian mail carrier who asked not to work on Sundays. So essentially, this enshrined or reaffirmed from the Constitution that employers should make specific accommodations for employees who have religious preferences, such as if you celebrate Shabbat or the Lord's Day or Sabbath, which was in this case. And that was 9-0. So kudos to the liberal judges who upheld religious freedom. I think that's a really good sign. The other thing that was really important that really kind of got a lot of backlash from conservatives was on elections. It was Moore versus Harper. The justices again, this is according to NBC, the justices turned away a bid to curb state court authority over election laws. Basically, they made it so election laws, even on the state level, is still a federally kind of overseen thing. And so there are a lot of people really upset about this. I haven't really thought enough about it to give you my honest opinion. I will say this, though. The court rules on what is and not what should be. If you're talking about what should be, then what you're going to have to do is go to Congress, have them pass laws, maybe even amend the Constitution. The judges and the justices are only there to interpret the Constitution correctly. And so if you have a problem, again, this is why I need to kind of delve into it sooner. There's kind of two opinions that you can have. You can have the opinion that the justices got it wrong about the Constitution, or you can have the opinion the justices got it right on the Constitution, but we need to change the Constitution. And that's fine as well. But I just think it's important to really differentiate those two things because they're very different. And that's really going to decide what you're advocating for rather than just simply saying you're upset for it. The last thing I want to say on affirmative action is I'm glad it's over because not only is this going to make it more equal and fair for white and Asian Americans to get into college, but this is going to do a great service to those people who are being benefited, again, I say in quotes, by affirmative action, such as Hispanics or African Americans. For me, again, if I want to have self-worth, why would I want to know the only reason that I got into college was because my parents paid a lot of money, or in the case of affirmative action, because I'm black or I'm Hispanic? That doesn't do great for my self-worth because I didn't get to choose my skin color. But I do get to choose how hard I work. I get to choose how diligent I am in going for specific colleges, how much I focus on certain things, how strategic I am with my life. Those things I do get to decide. And so if I get into a college knowing that on my merit I got in, I'm going to feel really great about myself and feel very encouraged and ready to go to make a contribution to society, as well as to give back like many have for those great institutions. But if I got in because, and I knew that it was because I was black or Hispanic, that would be insulting to me. Not only would it be insulting to me, but it's not good for the market and not good for those people. If today, for instance, I said something really untrue about Joe Biden, and he sued me for defamation. I don't know why he would do that, but maybe he would. I want the best lawyer possible because I've got Joe Biden coming at me. If I've got Joe Biden coming at me, he's coming at me with a huge team of lawyers. I'm going to want the best of the best. So I'm going to go maybe to some Harvard grads. Harvard's a great law school. And I want the very best. What I don't want is to have to think to myself when I have two black lawyers helping me, did these guys get into law school because they are black or because they were the best? I don't want those thoughts coming in my head. If I saw a black guy in the street who was a lawyer, I would think, awesome, he probably does a good job. I don't know why affirmative action is there to make people succeed if it only causes the perception that they are only there because of their skin color. I want the best of the best, and I don't care about their skin color. I just want the best lawyer to defend me.